Hello everyone, I'm Leroy Harris, Programming Librarian here at the New Ulm Public Library, and I'm very happy to welcome you back to our second annual Stories for the Season. This year we've done a great collaboration together with the State Street Theater, NUCAT, and we're very excited to have the Brown County Historical Society joining us this year to provide us with our reading material. All of the readings that you'll be hearing come from the Brown County Historical Archives. And so they'll include letters, personal remembrances, newspaper clippings, as well as some fun recipes. We hope you enjoy these stories for the season.
This article was written by Monica Sturm in January of 2012. It's called Christmas on the Block of 200 South Broadway, 1953 to 1967. The Christmas season in our home at 204 South Broadway always started on the first Sunday of Advent with the lighting of the first purple candle on the Advent wreath, along with the reading of prayers. The book of Advent prayers and activities probably came from liturgical press at St. John's University, since I had two older brothers who at the time were immersed in Benedictine tradition. At the age of 4, I also had an Advent calendar with a window to open every day, up to the day of Christmas itself. In those days of childhood, it was always so exciting to wake up each morning in anticipation of Christmas. The house was cozy and warm. In the 1950s, there was little concern about having the thermostat set too high. Plus, I had the love of my family and my red corduroy pants lined with plaid flannel. What more could one want at the age of 4? Of course, one could always hope that St. Nicholas would come on December 6th. Had I behaved well enough the previous year to hope he would come and bring some treats as well? I had a Christmas stocking that I'd hung on the outside doorknob, and overnight St. Nicholas had filled it with traditional fare found in many stockings in the mid-50s. Apples, oranges, ribbon candy, nuts. When I was 6, I remembered the feast day before my parents did, and oh, was there ever a scramble that night to make sure that St. Nicholas had paid a visit by the next morning. I remember we were driving downtown looking at the Christmas lights. When I mentioned to my parents that the next day was the Feast of St. Nicholas, they gave each other the look. At the time, my dad had a 1950 lima green bean colored Studebaker. We pulled in by Joe Braureiter's grocery store on the other side of Snowbritch's meat market. My dad had me wait in the car and visit with him while my mom shopped for St. Nicholas to make sure he would get to make a visit. During Advent, one was expected to give up something or do some act of sacrifice in order to better prepare one's heart for the birth of Jesus. I doubt that I gave up cookies. From after Thanksgiving up to Christmas, my mother was consumed with baking Christmas cookies. Lebkuchen, her cutout cookies, both white and molasses, which in New Ulm had to be rolled paper thin. And she would make her famous Christmas stollen, braided in the shape of the Christ child in swaddling clothes. Many of the cookies and stollen she would make as Christmas gifts for family and friends. The Christmas season on our block also included in a huge way the holidays at the Otto and Mary Schneider house at 212 South Broadway. By the time I was born, Otto Schneider, an August Shell Brewing family descendant, had already died, but his widow Mary lived there along with her son Armin and his wife Rose. I got to know the Schneiders through Mary's granddaughter, Jean Husner. Her mother was Addie Husner, a daughter to Mary Schneider and sister to Armin. Both my mother and Jeannie's wanted a childhood friend for her daughter, and Jeannie and I were it. Many of the Christmases were spent at the Schneider house since Grandma, a name she allowed me to use as well, had mobility issues and could not have walked the short distance to our house in the snow. Oh, the Christmases spent there. How wonderfully and traditionally German. The dining room table laden with food. My mother had brought over her German and Czech food, and Aunt Rose outdid herself, making Käsekuchen, Springerle, and also a bread called Hutzelbrot. It's a German pear bread, which is super good. It is made at the beginning of October and soaked and preserved in wine or brandy-soaked cloth and sliced thinly. I remember Rose telling us that she even had some left over from a year previous and that it was still good. There was no concern about germs when it came to certain German food, especially when preserved in alcohol. Oh, the people the Schneiders would have over for guests between Christmas and January 6th, the Feast of the Epiphany. Elderly Grandma Schwing was there with her gray hair braided in 2 plaits that she wound around her head like a crown. or like a German Oma. I still have her recipe for potato bread, which I made for many years. And there was Susie Schwing, her daughter, who would knit with true homespun wool. Mrs. Bushers, the neighbor between our house and the Schneiders, would also come with her caregiver, Meta Fander. Jeannie and I were in the midst of this wizened, aged group, hanging on to every word. The Tannenbaum at the Schneiders was, in my mind, magnificent. It wasn't the super-duper artificial tree you see these days, but it was tall and had lots of bare spots for large ornaments that would fit those spots so well. Once in a while, a niece of Grandma's would visit. This lady was Oleta Mikuski. She was a school teacher who had spent most of her adult life teaching in country schools. Oleta had a hobby farm on the poor farm road where her livestock included horses, peacocks, and a variety of exotic animals. Poor Grandma. She didn't always like it when Oleta came, for Oleta rarely bathed, and her ankles were really dirty. Once, Oleta had our whole neighborhood out for coffee and dessert. Obviously, Oleta didn't like to clean her house any more than she did her ankles. I was intrigued by the bohemian look, but most of the others just thought it looked bad. Another relative, Laura and Frank Neiman, also invited us to their house for a Christmas lunch. This easily met the Schneider standards. I remember to this day that Laura Neiman made her own marzipan fruit, and gosh, was that a treat. More often than not, Jeannie and I were relegated to the kids' table in the kitchen. That wasn't the worst. We had a grown-up tea set along with dolls we'd received for Christmas, but since hardly anyone in the neighborhood knew what tea was, we would get our first taste of coffee. On days that the house was quiet, and my mother and I would visit, just with Jeannie and her mother, over for afternoon coffee, I remember sitting for hours watching Grandma knit, and how much I wanted to do the same. At the age of 12, I told her I was ready, and she proceeded to teach me to knit. We started with slippers. I advanced so quickly that a few years later, she would consult with me about patterns. It was great fun to share ideas with her. Of course, we received Christmas gifts, Jeannie and I, but what I remember and treasure most is the community that we had in our neighborhood, the sharing of some long ago traditions as well as the German heritage that was so quickly and eagerly given. We were a close-knit community, and I am grateful for the love that was shared among the neighbors.